Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. This is Susan Del Rosario from Tutor.com. Thank you so very much for joining us today. We're excited to have you on the webinar about best practices for library and community partnerships. We're going to get started in just about a minute here. We're waiting for more folks to get joined in and get their audio turned on and everything. So while we're doing that, I wanted to walk you through a couple different logistics in order for you get the most out of your experience with our webinar. So you'll see on the screen right now a GoToWebinar control panel. You should have something very similar to this on your screen at this point in time. If you don't see the full panel, you might want to look for a little red arrow. Should be pointing left if it's minimized. Just click on that. It will expand your GoToWebinar control panel. This is where you are going to ask questions. We have hundreds of folks signed up for the webinar already and online, and so we have to keep the phone lines muted in order to minimize that background noise. But we definitely want to engage with you. We'd love to hear your stories, answer your questions, and get your feedback and comments as well. And so using the GoToWebinar control panel, you can click on this section that says questions, and you can go ahead and enter questions, comments, or your own stories in there. At the end of the presentation then, we'll go ahead and we'll read out questions that we received throughout the last 45 minutes or so. The other section that you will find on there is handouts. Now, I've uploaded 3 different handouts for you guys. If you click on handouts, you should be able to then click on the different PDFs, and they'll download into your browser window usually just automatically when you click on them. So you'll find a PDF of the presentation as well as a certificate of completion for your training. And then just in case anyone, this is not a Tutor.com sales presentation, but in case anybody is interested in learning more about Tutor.com, I put in our library learning suite sheet on there for you to download as well. So one thing I always like to do before we get started, and I should have done this first, but I want to make sure you can hear us and that you're seeing the screen and your technology's working. You can find your GoToWebinar control panel. So right now, go ahead and find that panel and click on this little button that looks like a hand, and raise your hand and let me know that you can hear me and that you found that panel. All right, wonderful. Wonderful, seeing lots and lots of hands going up. Perfect. So that lets us know everything technology-wise is working well. So all of that business out of the way, we are going to go ahead and jump into the presentation. So again, I want to thank you guys for joining us, and especially thank the staff at Forsyth County Public Library here in Georgia. On the other side of the state in Georgia, they're over north of Atlanta. They're going to be sharing with us their best practices in libraries and community partnerships. We have 3 presenters today from the library. We have Paula Glover, Tracy Walker, and Sarah Reynolds. Each one will share with you their story on the different partnerships that they manage and have worked with within the community. I've heard the information that they're going to be presenting, and I know these are things that a lot of our library partners talk to us about frequently, and so I'm very excited to have them share their stories with you. Again, if you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to enter those into your GoToWebinar control panel, and then at the end, we'll go ahead and read off those questions for Paula, Tracy, and Sarah. So all of that being said, Paula, I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to you, and you guys can take it away.
Thank you, Susan. We appreciate your wonderful welcome. Just going to take a moment here and make sure we are showing you the correct thing. So we're here today to share with you a little bit about our community and our library. We're going to explain some of the challenges that we're facing, things that you might also be going up against, and how we're developing and strengthening partnerships that will help us address those challenges.
Okay.
We're also going to give you a little...
1 second. Let's flip the screen. It did it again. It flipped it back. So you're on your...
You gotta love technology, right?
Yeah. We did test this first, you guys. We were prepared, but it's wonky. Okay, now you got it. Go for it.
Okay. That was not exactly the peek behind the curtain I was planning to share with you, so we apologize for that. But what we will give you a peek behind the curtain at is some of the programs and partnerships that we're working on so that you can learn both from our mistakes and from our successes, and that you can hit the ground running with your own plans and ideas for your library. So, how did partnerships become so important to our library? We've enjoyed good relationships with our local schools and with a few literacy-based community organizations since we became an independent system about 20 years ago. We're proactive about maintaining a strong board of trustees, and we go through a strategic plan review cycle every 5 years or so to make sure that we're delivering the materials and services our community needs. Last year, we invited community leaders and patrons to help us rework our strategic plan, and we came away with that process with a whole new mandate on how we can do more and be more for our community. Our community needs us to serve the entire Forsyth community, which is pretty large. We're at 220,000 residents. We're the fastest growing county in Georgia, and we're the 11th fastest growing county in the country. And we want to deliver a transformational library experience, let people know that we're more than just books. And we want to be known as a champion of literacy and lifelong learning. But we realized if we're going to do all that, we're going to need lots of help. Our leadership team formalized our outreach efforts and expanded our programming and started talking with organizations about ways that we could work together. It started at the top with our board and our library director, Anna Lyle, and then Stephen Kite, our deputy director. Anna and Steve worked with all the department and branch leaders, including my co-presenters today, Tracy and Sarah, to set the tone for all of our staff and volunteers. But before we forged any new partnerships, we had to do some soul searching. We started by figuring out where the barriers existed to using the library. Things like language or transportation or health or even incarceration or maybe misconceptions that folks have about the library. Then we had to figure out how to meet those underserved populations where they are in our community. And once we understood the barriers and how to find the people that need our services, we experimented and we're still experimenting with how to communicate with them and what services would best fit their needs. Then we prioritized the partnerships that would maximize our efforts to serve the whole community. And those are the ones we're going to focus our discussion on today. We started with the local public schools as they offer a centralized way to reach 48,000 potential library patrons at once. So Forsyth is a great place to live. And one of the things that makes it great is that we have a wonderful public school system with 21 elementary schools, 10 middle schools, 6 high schools, and 1 virtual academy. And while it's wonderful to have all those potential partners, getting a foot in the door and being heard over everyone else is tough. At a branch level, our staff has been working for years with those individual administrators and media specialists at several schools. But it's difficult to reach all 38 of them, and frankly, sometimes we didn't, with our constraints on staff time and funding, or maybe even a lack of response from the schools. But there were 2 major developments that really revitalized the system-wide partnership between the library and the Forsyth County school system. First, we made it ridiculously simple to get a library card, and second, we provided free tutoring. We rewrote our library card policy in 2016 to make it super simple to get a library card. Before the policy change, you either had to live in or own property in Forsyth and then prove it with an ID or a tax or utility bill, or you had to be a county employee, which again, you had to prove with your county issued ID. But if you didn't fit those categories, you could purchase an out-of-county card for $60 a year. Now, after the policy change, all students, teachers, and staff of any educational institution in Forsyth, public or private, preschool through college, would now be eligible for a library card, completely free of charge. And once that new policy took effect, our library director and other library leaders began reaching out to the superintendent of schools, the school communications office, and the lead media specialist for the county. We were ringing their phones off the hook to share this exciting benefit for all the students of Forsyth County. And out of all this excitement came the idea that not only would the school system be willing to help us spread the word about getting a library card, they would actually help us with collecting signups as new students registered in the school system. As they registered new incoming students, particularly incoming kindergartners, the school system would ask the parents' consent to sign the student up for a library card. And boom, done. Thousands of new incoming library card holders. Or so we thought. In reality, it was a little more complex than that. So in hopes that you'll get off to a smoother start, let's take a peek behind the curtain. First, with the My First Library Card project, we had to get the data from the school system. That wasn't technically complicated, just extract the data from the school's database and insert it in the library's database. But the complexity came in recognizing that we are passing personal data for literally thousands of students and their guardians around. Both our organizations have a duty to protect that information from being accessed by unauthorized parties or used in ways that aren't intended. So here's how we cleared that hurdle. The school's IT department met with the library's IT department and decided exactly what information would be required to create a library card account. The schools would extract only that data, no extraneous info, just the bare minimum of name, student ID, and contact info. And instead of sending it electronically, they would provide it on a portable drive. So we felt a little bit like James Bond, but our team went over to the school system, picked up the portable drive, hand-delivered it to the library. We inserted the data in our database and scrubbed it to make sure that no extraneous data was loaded in there. And then we turned around and sent that portable drive back to the school system so that data could be handled appropriately. And then we started sending messages to those parents and caregivers with instructions about how they can access their new library card account and how to pick up a physical library card. Then that drive was returned back to the same hands at the school's IT department. That sort of was cumbersome for both parties, so we agreed to do it in batches, but the drawback to that method is that patrons have a long lead time between requesting a card and actually getting one. The second bump in the road for that partnership was that we needed to get students and parents excited about that. So, to make it more kid and teen friendly, we launched the My First Library Card contest last summer with one of our promotional partners, Macaroni Kid. They're a local family blogger. With help from the schools and Macaroni Kid spreading the word, we invited all kids all over the county to design a new library card during our summer reading program. Out of 250 entries, we picked 2 winning designs, one for pre-K to 5th grade and one for 6th through 12th grades, and unveiled them just in time for the start of a new school year, when students would be coming into the library to pick up their new library cards. Now, in the 2.5 years since we started offering free library cards to all students and educators, we've seen a 61% increase in registered patrons. Getting these new patrons into the library gave our staff a chance to get in front of them was something they found really valuable, and the thing that added a little more glue to the bond between the library and all the teachers, parents, and students at Forsyth County Schools: free tutoring. So everyone knows tutoring is an enormously valuable service for educators and for students, but it's also pretty expensive. But last summer, when we had the opportunity to offer Tutor.com services to our patrons, we grabbed onto it with both hands. You probably already know about the benefits of Tutor.com for students, but we were particularly excited about how our student patrons could get help with on demand during the times they were most likely to be doing homework. For us, that's 4 o'clock in the afternoon till about 11. We were also very impressed that Tutor.com offered services in Spanish, and our partners at the school system were too. So we had a really short lead time between knowing we were moving forward with the service and our launch, which coincided with the start of school on August 1st. We start a little early here in the South. It was really important that we communicated with teachers and parents and students about the availability of the service as they were making arrangements for the new academic year. We wanted them to at least try the service once so that the next time they needed help, the library and Tutor.com might be the first place they thought about going. To make that happen and to do it quickly, we went straight to our school partners. We used the promotional materials provided by Tutor.com, and we drafted an email announcement about the library's launch of Tutor.com. But instead of sending it ourselves and risking it ending up in spam filters or just being deleted, we asked the superintendent of schools to send the message to all teachers, counselors, administrators, and media center specialists. He was so excited, first, about giving the students access to free tutoring, and number two, that we'd done the work of drafting the message for him, that he included the announcement in his weekly email newsletter to staff, not just once, but for the next several weeks. Then we worked with local media to publish stories about the new service and how students can access it with their new free library cards. Once we got the word out, we encouraged students to try using Tutor.com, and we took specific information on the SAT and ACT test prep to guidance counselors in all the high schools. We asked them to hang posters or flyers in their offices and to mention Tutor.com's test prep programs when they're advising students on the college prep pathway. Then we went grassroots by reaching out and making friends with media specialists and school librarians. They in turn invited our staff to give demonstrations on how to access Tutor.com and other library services at PTO meetings. We gave and are still being invited to give presentations on digital literacy and other library services at special parent meetings, curriculum nights, and school assemblies all over the county. In fact, Tracy was invited to speak at the Board of Education last month when they televised their public meeting, and she explained how the library provides Tutor.com services for the benefit of Forsyth County students. She also visited 2 meetings last month at Sharon Elementary and Johns Creek Elementary for families for whom English is a second language. Tracy secured several library card signups right on the spot at those schools, simply because Tutor.com was available in Spanish, and those parents saw the value of being able to follow along with their child during a tutoring session. We considered our launch of this service a success, largely due to the support of the local school system. In the first month, over 550 students tried using Tutor.com. But we're finding that the biggest challenge in working with the local schools on programs like this one is staying top of mind. All the teachers and administrators and counselors, they get so busy and they're inundated with news about all sorts of things that they and their students could find valuable. So even though we're only a few weeks into our summer break, we're already planning a back-to-school campaign focused on Tutor.com and the ways that we're going to communicate with schools throughout the year to make sure that our free services and their free library cards stay top of mind. But beyond working so closely with the local K-12 school system, we're also fortunate to partner with a local state university. Our library offers robust programming for children and teens, and those programs are really well attended. But adults are harder to grab. They're busy, their inboxes are crowded, their schedules are full, and we needed help in designing programs that would inspire them to visit the library, but still not break our programming budget. The University of North Georgia has been integral to our efforts to serve adults in our community simply by lending us the passion and expertise of their faculty. Our town is home to one of UNG's 5 satellite campuses, and our partnership originally began through the efforts of our library board chairman, who, by the way, also serves on the University Foundation's board. So it's helpful to have a connection there. But we also work with our library staff members on connecting with individual deans and professors to give them a platform for sharing their work outside the classroom. For the last several years, the most popular program we've been able to offer together has been Great Decisions. It's a nationwide program that those of you in academia might already be familiar with. Great Decisions is produced by the Foreign Policy Association, and each year it discusses several globally relevant topics in libraries and schools and other community venues. So here's how we run that program that might help you launch something similar in your own community. When the FBA releases their list of topics, we go and meet with the dean of the university's College of Arts and Letters, and we set the schedule for public discussions at the library. Then the dean goes and recruits professors from UNG who have the expertise in these topic areas to present at the library and discuss the topic in detail with our patrons. For our part, we purchase the FBA's books and documentaries on the topics, and we make them available to card holders in our collection. We also handle all the local promotions and media relations, and we coordinate phone or on-camera interviews with the presenters and local media to help build some interest in attending the program. Part of the promotional effort includes sending print and digital materials to the campus for distribution to students or to put on display. And those opportunities help us share information about the library, and let UNG students know that the library cards are free for them and that we offer programs to extend and build upon what they're discussing in their classes. It's also a chance for us to talk with them about using our private study rooms, things they can reserve at each branch. Those come in handy for group projects and cramming for finals. And we can also share study resources, test prep, and career assistance available at the library. So between the UNG professors spreading the word and our own efforts to encourage participation in Great Decisions, the 2018 series was a wonderful success. Over 500 patrons participated in the series this year. Beyond Great Decisions, we've worked with UNG professors to deliver other programs that are interesting and inspiring to adults. For example, this spring when everybody was in a frenzy over the engagement of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, we found a UNG history professor who'd actually written the book on it. Maybe not Harry and Meghan, but at least written a book on British marriages throughout history. So she agreed to speak and sign copies of that book at 2 events in our Tying the Winds Are Not series on British culture, history, and fashion. And then when we renovated and expanded and reopened one of our branches earlier this year, we called on UNG again. As part of that branch's grand opening, we wanted to unveil a new world language collection that includes books in Mandarin Chinese, Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, and Spanish. We wanted to include cultural programs to highlight each of those languages. And since UNG grants degrees in some of those, we invited them to participate. 4 of their faculty members came and gave a presentation on Chinese history and the cultural traditions surrounding tea. They even brought samples for our patrons to taste. Mostly, these jointly delivered programs go smoothly. We've worked with UNG long enough that we've cultivated a good reputation with the University Relations Office, and they trust us to use their name and logo without much oversight. But if you're hoping to develop a similar partnership in your community, we have a few words of caution. Plan early, and then plan even earlier, because the wheels of university administration committees, they move kind of slowly. For example, this summer, we were working with the faculty member in the teacher education department. We wanted to present a summer book club for parents of elementary and middle school students. We called it The Challenged, and its purpose was to be a place where parents can read books that have been challenged or banned in some libraries, not ours, let's be very clear, and then discuss them openly with other parents and with the UNG faculty, whose job it is to train the next generation of teachers. Well, it sounds simple enough. It's a book club. Libraries do that all the time. But this particular professor had applied for grant funding to cover the cost of the books and staff time. She also wanted to do an in-depth review of the discussions, which she intended to record. So not only did the idea of recording patron comments have to clear a hurdle with our library leaders, the grant funding for the research element meant the whole program had to pass muster with the boards of academic review and budgeting at UNG. And those boards make decisions at meetings that don't always happen at convenient times, and the results aren't always communicated instantly. So all our promotions for the Challenge Book Club had to stay under wraps until official approval came down, giving us just a few weeks to spread the word as part of our promotions for summer reading. And now that we're talking of summer reading, I'm going to pass it over to Tracy and let her share that with you.
Thank you, Paula. Well, it is summer, finally, and all those wonderful things that come with it. We have our vacations and warmer weather, but one of the not so wonderful things is that dreaded summer slide, when so many kids and teens stop reading over the summer. So the most important goal of Summer Reading Fun is to prevent summer slide. So kids and teens are ready to hit the ground running when school starts back up in fall. And another important goal for us is encouraging adults to model good reading habits for the young people in their lives, which in turn encourages them to be lifelong learners. Now, we've had a successful summer reading program at our library for a number of years now, but we noticed that participation numbers were dropping, especially last summer. So we made a conscious decision to restructure the program. We asked ourselves the question, what could re-energize this program for our community? And we found our answer in our question, community. In past years, kids and teens who completed the program received one new book as their prize at the program's end in July. But in reaching out to businesses and organizations in our community, we were able to redesign our program and offer readers a wide array of incentives, all with the goal of keeping more people reading over the summer and truly making this a community program. And we recognized that if we wanted our community to care and share our passion for the importance of literacy, we needed to reach out. And we did so through a combination of phone calls and emails and lots of personal visits. And in the end, 35 area businesses and organizations joined our mission and generously donated prizes for the program this year. And I just want to give you a little bit about the structure of our program. Our program is divided into 4 different age groups. We have preschool, elementary aged, teen, and adult. And we sought and received prize donations for all 4 of those age groups as well. When children and teens reach point levels of 100, 250, and 500 points, they earn a smaller prize. And once all ages, preschool through adult, reach 500 points, they start earning entries for grand prizes. And I'll share with you some examples of prize donations from some of our community businesses. Some organizations donated multiple coupons for free items, such as free Zaxby's Kids meals from Zaxby's, cards for free ice streams from Chick-fil-A, free Frosties from Wendy's. And then some donated larger single prizes, and those include things like a half-day fly fishing lesson on the water from Bowman Fly Fishing, a mountain bike donation from Zaxby's, and an e-reader donation by the Modern Woodman Financial Group. Now, it can be daunting asking for donations and sponsorships, but having a plan and an idea of what you're asking for can help alleviate some of that discomfort. And sharing the program's mission and how we're all working together to build a stronger community is really helpful as well. Leading with that shared mission is key. And gratitude is so important. Thank your sponsors whenever and wherever you can. Recognize their generosity by including sponsor names and logos in all your promotional materials. You send thank you letters from your director at the end of the program, along with photos of the lucky winners. Provide proud sponsor signs that they can display in their places of business. It's a really wonderful way to create a sense of community and camaraderie, and it really allows the community to feel and take ownership of their library, which is so important. Another important change to the program this year has been the introduction of new software for us, for patrons to register for summer reading. And through that software, we were also able to keep track of the number of books read, as well as the number of minutes spent reading, the number of students involved from each of our county schools, and involvement by age group, a myriad of things we've been able to track that will help us going forward. So what have we noticed so far with all of these changes? Well, last year we saw a significant drop in the number of registrations compared to the year before, almost 20% drop. And we're about 3 weeks into this year's program, and we've already seen a significant increase in registrations. And just to give you an idea, last year at the end of the program, we had 4,900 people registered for Summer Reading Fun. This year, we have over 7,000 people registered, and we're not quite halfway through our program yet. So we're off to a really good start, and we've received lots of positive feedback from patrons and community businesses and organizations as well. With the introduction of our new software, we've also given our participants the opportunity to complete activities in addition to logging reading minutes. And this has been one of the most exciting additions for us. These activities allow us to incorporate and serve a greater number of learning styles, from visual to kinesthetic. And these activities include things like creating art based on the books that you've read and exploring wonderful programs like Tutor.com. And we have had patrons tell us that just these changes alone and those activities have inspired their kids to read this summer where they haven't before. And those are the stories that we really want and love to hear. So we're learning along the way. We're paying very close attention to what's working and what needs tweaking. So we continue honing the program as we go forward and into the future. So we've got a redesigned program, new software, new excitement. How do we get the word out? Well, we have a very talented promotion specialist named Paula, and Paula creates summer reading guides for all of our branches, detailing all the programs and incentives offered throughout the summer. She also creates a promotional plan that includes posters and social media, press releases, in-house shelf talkers, and our community sponsors help spread the word as well. We also have amazing youth supervisors and specialists who provide outreach programs to most of our county schools promoting summer reading fun. If you want to involve community businesses and organizations in programs, begin early, and this is crucial. Some donors will need time to receive corporate approval for their donations, or they might require outside printing. You want to make sure that you're giving your donors and yourself enough time to have everything ready by the program start date. And when you talk to potential donors and partners, have written materials that you can give them about the program with things like the mission of the program, how many people the program serves in the community, information about how summer reading plays such a critical role in young people's success in school. Seeking community partnerships is a really beautiful way to bring people together. It creates a common goal, and it highlights the generosity and support of our communities as well. And I think if we look at a community as a living, breathing entity, the public library is its heart. We serve all. At our core, that's our most profound mission. And having said that, I think that might be a good segue into talking about Leap into Literacy. So how did the Leap into Literacy program develop? Well, a district comprehensive needs assessment was administered through our school system, where they determine educational needs based on where we are now compared to where we would like to be in the future. And this needs assessment revealed that an increasing number of rising kindergarten students in our county were entering kindergarten in the public school unprepared. And the majority of those children were being raised in low-income homes. So with that in mind, Leap into Literacy was created. It's a collaborative group. It consists of the Forsyth Public Library, the Forsyth County Schools, Literacy Forsyth, and Georgia Highlands Medical Group. And it was formed with the goal of helping at-risk families provide the necessary early literacy background and skills to their children so they're better prepared to enter kindergarten. And it also helps to even that playing field. The program currently takes place on a quarterly basis. The way we have it structured right now, 2 of those quarterly programs are held during the day. And so far we have had them at Georgia Highlands Medical Center, as well as at our Cumming Library branch. And 2 of those programs are held in the evening. Now, the evening programs are held at one of our county's Title I elementary schools. And all of the quarterly programs provide early literacy instruction and story times and activities. And at our evening programs, families receive a free, simple dinner as well. When we're able, through donations, 1 free book is given to every family who attends to encourage families to develop their own home libraries. And there have been so many revelations about the important role that nutrition plays in brain function and behavior and academic success. And the health aspect of this program is such an important component of developing those early literacy skills. The program is promoted in a number of ways, similar to how we promote our summer reading fun program. Promotional plans are created for each event that include a number of materials in both English and in Spanish. Posters are distributed to the school system, to Literacy Forsyth, Georgia Highlands Medical. The event is promoted on our library website as well, and in our publications and social media. Word of mouth through presentations and outreach in the community is very helpful too. And press releases are also sent to our local media for coverage. And you know, with any new program, there are always going to be lessons along the way, lessons to be learned. And that's a good thing. It's how you grow and how you improve. And our first program for Leap into Literacy was quite successful in terms of the number of families in attendance. However, it drew a lot of our library patrons who already attend our story times on a regular basis, not the at-risk families we were trying to reach. So between all of our organizations involved in the program, we brainstormed on how could we better reach those at-risk families. And we decided that providing a simple supper might just be the answer. And we were so excited to discover that it was. Our attendance numbers doubled at our second program, which was held at one of our Title I elementary schools. And the vast majority of those attending were from our target population. The free dinner, which consisted of spaghetti and salad and breadsticks, was provided at a great discount by one of our locally owned restaurants, and the remaining cost was paid for with donations from Literacy Forsyth. And the library was also able to obtain a generous donation from Publix grocery stores to provide a simple dessert that night as well. Now, going forward, we will continue to include meals as a portion of the program to the best of our ability. At our most recent Leap into Literacy, which was held at our Cumming Library branch, we provided a very simple breakfast of muffins that were provided by an individual donor. And also, looking at lessons learned, the organizational aspects of the program, things such as the number of volunteers and craft supplies that are needed, become clearer the more programs we have under our belt. So that part of the program becomes a good bit easier over time. Can other libraries or communities create a program similar to Leap into Literacy? Absolutely. A great first step is reaching out to other organizations within your community with whom you could partner. The school providers who you know serve at-risk families in your communities. A program like Leap into Literacy does not have to be elaborate, just welcoming. And like I said earlier, I know asking for donations can be a really daunting task sometimes, but I think you find that there are a number of businesses and individuals in communities who would really love to help when given the opportunity to do so. Are there grocery stores in your community that could provide a simple breakfast, or are there grants that you could apply for? And if you're not able to provide a new book to each family, does your library have a friends group? Could they provide gently loved books? There are so many ways to create these community partnerships, and those partnerships in turn strengthen us all, communities and organizations and individuals alike. And on the subject of strengthening communities, I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague, Sarah, who is going to talk about outreach.
Thank you, Tracy. All right. Hold on. Okay. As we mentioned earlier, Forsyth County Public Library works with our Board of Directors to ensure that our strategic plan affects the needs of the community and is updated regularly. We recently finalized our strategic plan for 2017 through 2022, which provides for the following key objectives: serving the entire Forsyth County community, delivering transformational service, and championing lifelong literacy. Once we had those objectives laid out, we were then challenged with how to accomplish them. Our existing library services are amazing, but do not meet fully the enormous task of serving the entire community. So to provide direction, we created specific strategies. We needed to identify barriers to folks using library services, provide library services to traditionally underserved populations, expand awareness and outreach to both current and future library users, and develop partnerships to maximize efforts to serve the entire community. So first we had to identify what was keeping people in our community from using the library. Transportation is a big issue here as there's really no public transportation offered. We do have a dial-a-ride service, but it offers limited hours and service areas. Language is also another barrier to service. Forsyth County is becoming increasingly more diverse with an estimated Asian population of about 12% and a 9% Spanish-speaking population. And while we do offer some bilingual programs and the World Language Collection Paula spoke about earlier, we know that more needs to be done to get the word out to these populations about library services. Sometimes also culture or life experiences have limited potential patrons' understanding of what libraries can do and how they can be of service. So we really need to provide a context for library services for many people. Additionally, we all battled misconception of what libraries are. The word needs to get out for sure that we are no longer institutions filled with dust and dim lighting and stern book guardians and noise police. Another barrier to service we found was in our community was incarceration. So once we had identified these barriers, we could then focus on how to deliver services to these underserved populations. We started in identifying relationships that we already had in place and found that we had a pretty good foundation. Our library director is on the board of Mentor Me, a local mentoring group that serves school-age children and youth in need of positive role models. Our deputy director is on the board of the Place of Forsyth County, which serves the community with financial emergency assistance, clothing, food, and additional support services, including workforce development. Branch staff go into Head Starts and daycares, local schools, including ESOL parent meetings and student classes. We also offer book discussion groups at an assisted living facility. Tracy already discussed Leap into Literacy, which is another amazing outreach partnership opportunity. And then we also just have staff members who are part of civic groups, including United Way, and folks that attend collaborative meetings to network with other people serving underserved populations. So in looking at all this, we knew that we needed to take our show on the road and meet the community where they are. What just happened? Rather than just jump in head first, we decided to create a pop-up library that would allow us to test the waters. And essentially, this is a small-scale library that can fit in the back of a van, offers library card signups, reference assistance, and demonstrations of library resources, and a small collection of popular materials. I'll go into more detail about that in a bit, about how we put it together and lessons learned in the process. So when we're talking about partnerships, we first wanted to look at our long-term partners. We've already discussed some of our biggest, which is the partnership with the Forsyth County School System. This is a relationship that we continue to nurture and develop, but we also have long-term relationships in place with Literacy Forsyth, and we co-sponsor community-wide reading events with them. The Master Gardeners maintain garden spaces at all of our branches and offer programs for our patrons. Forsyth County Public Library Friends and Advocates are huge supporters of the library, providing funding for summer reading fun, programming materials, and library collections. They also advocate for library services and expand library awareness through participation in community events. We are very excited about our newest endeavor with the Friends Group. We received a Facebook post and learned that Forsyth County Jail was in need of paperback books for their inmates. Forsyth County Public Library reached out and connected with the program director for the jail, who had basically been purchasing these books from Goodwill and other places, and occasionally she'd get a donation, but she was building this collection on her own. Now, this is a facility that has 64 pods, and each of which can house up to 12 inmates. And based on the security level, some people can spend up to 23 hours a day in a cell. Books are hugely important to these folks, and Officer McAllister is passionate about making sure they have what they need and in the best condition that she can get. Well, before we actually sat down with Officer McAllister, we contacted our friends group and asked if they would be willing to donate gently used paperback donations that they receive to the jail. And of course, they readily agreed. After we met with Officer McAllister, we got an idea of any content restrictions and lists of favorite authors and subjects of the inmates. And so in May, we delivered our first delivery of 200 books, all labeled with a donation plate referencing the library and the friends group. And going forward, we will deliver 100 books per month to the jail. Now, this partnership cost us nothing but a little time and maybe the price of some stickers and some ink. But the payoff is that we have provided resources to folks who are traditionally marginalized and overlooked. We also found a new friend and advocate in the Sheriff's Department, and again demonstrated that the library is the heart of the community, as Tracy so eloquently put it. Now, there are other partnerships, long-term partnerships, that we are hoping are going to develop. One is twice monthly pop-up library visits to market days at the place, which is where people go and shop for food assistance. We also have monthly ride-alongs to trailer parks with a mobile food pantry, as well as monthly pop-up library visits to Head Start. And this is in addition to the already monthly visits that our youth services staff do for programming and story times. All right, now let's look at short-term partners. Maybe. Hold on, I'm sorry, my slide. Oh, there it is. Okay. Short-term partnerships are also important to outreach services. And recently we attended a job fair sponsored by the Place of Forsyth County and had the opportunity to meet with job seekers and demonstrate many of our resources that could help in their job search and continuing education. The career coach and resume review opportunities offered by Tutor.com were extremely popular. We also look for community events such as movies in the park, family fun days, food truck events, senior expos, and festivals as opportunities to reach out to the community. We can show up with a tent, giant games, crafts, and activities for all ages, library resources, and knowledgeable staff to meet the community where they are. This summer, we are visiting 2 summer camps on a weekly basis to offer literacy programs as well as STEM programs. Just to kind of give you an idea of where we are, since January of 2018, Forsyth County Public Library has presented more than 110 outreach programs with a combined attendance of 21,000. So we think we're off to a pretty good start. All right, now we're going to talk about the pop-up library that I mentioned earlier as another way to get out in the community. Okay. To meet the strategic plan initiative of serving the entire community, we decided we would start with the pop-up library. We had a budget of approximately $4,000 for equipment and supplies. We looked at pop-up services offered by other libraries across the country for inspiration and came up with a base plan. We needed to brand the service and plan our equipment around a consistent look. We incorporated our library logo into a current visually appealing graphic that can easily be recognized out in the community. A tent was a must, as it was imperative that it be lightweight, high quality, and custom printed for brand recognition. By far, this was the most expensive single item, but it was well worth the cost. For just under $1,000, we purchased a high quality tent weighing less than 35 pounds with a rolling storage case, 2 custom printed fitted tablecloths, and 4 sandbags to secure the tent on windy days. One challenge of outfitting a project like this is that everything needs to be portable and lightweight, as well as sturdy and high quality. One of our first purchases was an adorable little blue bistro table and chair that you can actually see in this photo. It looked great, but it was difficult to transport. Also, it had a painted finish that I was concerned would chip easily, especially during transport. And despite the weight capacity of 264 pounds, it felt flimsy. So we returned it, and it was replaced with a much less flashy but way more appropriate foldable portable, cleanable plastic table, and high-quality camp chairs. Other items included in the pop-up are large foam squares for floor activities and story times, an outdoor rug, foldable picnic table, which it actually folds down to about the size of a small suitcase, and inside there are 4 stools. Milk crates are what we decided to use for shelving because they're easy to transport and they could also serve as shelving once we get on site. A collapsible hand cart is a must, just so you can haul easily all of this equipment, as well as bungee cords to secure them, and lots of plastic bins. Technology was another important consideration for this project. In order to be able to sign up patrons, we needed a secure connection to our ILS. Our IT department provided us with a hotspot and a laptop with a VPN connection to access files as well as the ILS remotely. We have 2 mini iPads with keyboards that we use for patrons to register using our online registration form, and they also come in handy when demonstrating e-resources on the fly. We have a wireless barcode scanner and a 4-port USB hub, and I do want to say that these items did come out of the technology budget and not out of the initial pop-up library budget. Another thing that was not included in our budget was money for materials, but we were able to build an amazing collection using weeded materials that were in good condition, including many recent bestsellers and children's books. We also took advantage of the donations both to the library branches and to the Friends organizations. As far as those materials and circulation periods, we're being very flexible with fines. We, again, don't want to create yet another barrier to service for these and turn these patrons away. Because we want to deliver as much of the library experience as possible and show that we are more than just books, we budgeted for games and activities such as a portable cornhole game, puzzles, blocks. We have maker supplies from plastic straws and painter's tape to mini motors and batteries and wires, and that allows us to offer STEM and STEAM projects on site. We also stocked up on arts and crafts supplies and activities appropriate for a variety of ages. At a recent visit to the YMCA camp, campers were challenged to race matchbox cars using wind, gravity, and/or magnetism to propel their vehicles. They had a great time and the kids really enjoyed the challenge. And at a recent visit to a local food pantry, in addition to library card signups, we also offered painted rock projects for adults, teens, and tweens. And one last thing we wanted to look at was a giveaway for new card registrations as we go to outreach events and expos. We purchased simple square magnets and silicone cell phone pockets, both featuring the library logo. They were reasonably priced and should have a relatively long shelf life as we do not have a pop-up budget heading into the next fiscal year. We are currently tracking the number of outreach programs in attendance, and we are also pulling old statistics and collating that data to get a better picture of our past efforts. We recently created an outreach patron profile in our ILS so we can track the number of new patrons generated from library outreach and keep an eye on their usage and see what they need. And once we establish a baseline, we can set more specific goals. The last thing about the pop-up, as far as lessons learned, I definitely recommend doing a soft launch and equipment testing. We actually visited all the branches and set up the pop-up library, so not only could staff see the pop-up, but patrons would become aware of the new service. And for us, it allowed us the opportunity to see how things are going to work, what equipment we needed. It also taught me that sometimes you need to solicit help from colleagues. It's not always going to be a one-man show, and sometimes you do need some help. Other lessons learned were that technology, no matter your best efforts, sometimes it does not work. So be sure to have paper backup, especially when you're doing library card registrations. And that is pretty much the pop-up library and library outreach in a nutshell. And now I'm going to pass it back to Paula to talk money.
Thank you for that, Sarah. Sarah gave us sort of a base introduction about how we spend the money that we do receive. So you're probably thinking, how do we get all of this? How do we pay for all of these programs? And that's a pretty fair question. And I'll answer it by saying that we approach our funding partners just like we do our community partners. We do it with an emphasis on how we can work together to do good for our communities and how we can communicate those things to the people who need to know. So first, let's break down our budget a little bit. We generate our own funds. About 3.5% of our revenue is derived from our own operations, so think copies and printing and fines and fees. And we, as was mentioned earlier, are very fortunate to have an active Friends group, and their operations of used bookstores at 3 of our 4 branches contribute about $40,000 to our budget every year. And we get a little less than 7% of our budget from our state. So we benefit from having a good relationship with our state library service. But the largest part of our funding, about 90% of it, comes from our county government. So we are very careful to maintain a warm working relationship with the Board of Commissioners, the county manager, and the county administration staff. So beyond the obvious things like managing your budget and meeting the deadlines, we're always finding ways to do more without always having to ask for more funding. Plus, our library director and our financial coordinator shoulder the responsibility of going to work with the county. So they will attend work sessions. They'll communicate with the county's communication department to let them know about library events or services that the Forsyth County government might like to share with citizens in their newsletters or on social media. Occasionally, they will even send someone to film our programs or film something about the library that residents and taxpayers need to know about. Our staff, particularly our deputy director, also reports on important statistics like branch visits and per capita circulation, so that county leaders know how valuable library services are to their constituents. We try to keep lines of communication open all the time, not just when we're seeking funding, and that means our municipal leaders know how valuable our services are and that our projects can get the consideration they're due when budget decisions are being made. A few minutes ago, you might remember that I mentioned we had a complete and major renovation on one of our branches at the Sharon Forks Library. Pardon me, I clicked one too many times. Part of that funding for the project at the Sharon Forks Library also came from a special purpose local option sales tax. So not only were we successful at using our partnership with the county to communicate the need for the expansion well enough to convince voters to support it, we also leveraged that into an additional $2 million of funding from the state. But that $2 million didn't just drop into our laps. Our library director and board chair worked tirelessly to create a compelling presentation about the desperate need for more space at Sharon Forks. And they shared this need personally with state senators and representatives for our district as we offered them tours of our branches and let them see for themselves how constituents were benefiting from library services. Then we called on our friends and partners at the Georgia Public Library Service to support our request to be considered for a state construction grant. And all of those efforts convinced the Georgia General Assembly to approve our request as part of the state's budget. And so we were able to stretch the renovation and expansion of that branch so much further for the benefit of our community and patrons. So we hope that you found our approach to partnerships helpful and that we have inspired you with some of these ideas to think of ways that you can work with your own local partners to bring your services to a wider audience in your community. I'll speak for Tracy and for Sarah and say that it's been our pleasure to be with you here today, and we welcome your questions.
It would help if I can find the unmute button so that I can read out the question for you all. Okay, let me just, what I've been doing, we have some great questions that came in. And so what I've been doing is actually putting them onto PowerPoint slides as we go along. So I'm going to go ahead and post up the questions that we've received. Jump into the end. Sorry, close your eyes if you get motion sick. I'm going to flash through these slides really quick here. All right. We'll get through all, we should be able to get through almost all of the questions today. If you all have to leave early though, remember we are recording this session and you can go back and look at the Q&A section a little bit later. So first up, do your local public schools employ school librarians? And if so, what was their role in the partnership you developed? And I know you touched on this a little bit more, but do you have more to elaborate with?
Sure, and that's a great question. Yes, our county public schools, they do have media specialists in some of our schools. However, not in all of them. Some of our schools have parapros instead. And that's a relationship between the public library and our public schools, our media specialists, that we're really working hard on to develop further right now. Our district media specialist is working really closely with us to figure out new ways that we can partner going forward into the future. And in looking at, in how things and how we've approached things in the past, we've taken outreach programs into the schools before, but that's really an area that we're looking to increase significantly going into the future and building an even stronger relationship with our school system.
All right, thank you, Tracy. Next question, I think, came from Paula's section around slide 8 when you were talking about the UNG partner. I think there might have been a blip in the audio or something. One of our attendees wanted to know, did you mention something about FDA topics, or was it a different acronym?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
The acronym is FP as in Paula A. It stands for Foreign Policy Association. The partnership that we were discussing with UNG was called Great Decisions, and that curriculum, I guess is a good word to describe it, is developed by the Foreign Policy Association, and they produce a book and then also a DVD documentary for each of the 8 topics that are selected each year.
All right, thank you for the clarification on that one. Next up, we have 2 that sort of go together. I think I know the answer to the first one, and I've responded over that it's Beanstack, but I want you guys just to clarify, is Beanstack what you use for the summer reading tracking?
It is, that's correct.
All right, great. And then can you, Tracy, give us those numbers again regarding your summer reading growth. What did you have last year versus where you stand this year?
Sure. Last year at the end of our program usually ends at the very end of July, right before school starts back up. And at the end of the program last summer, we had 4,900 registrations. Now that includes everybody from our preschool, elementary, teen, and adults. That's a combined number. And this year, so far, we're about 3 weeks into the program. Again, it will end, at the end of July. But as of this morning, we're just over 7,000 registrations, and that's a combined number. So we've seen a really significant increase.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Okay, the next one was a story that was shared with us, and I think this is great information for everybody. One of our attendees, Maria, shares with us that there's a program similar to the Leap into Literacy. It was created by the Louisiana Endowment for Humanities way back in 1991, and it's still going today. It's offered not just in Louisiana, but across in 40 different states right now. So if you guys are interested in that, it's www.primetimefamily.org. All right, and then the next question up that we have, when you looked at the barriers to access, did you guys look at fees and fees and whether that was an issue?
We're still talking about it. I said in the presentation, we know that it can create a barrier to service, and we also do use a collection agency, which, especially when you're looking at underserved populations, that could be just another layer. But we haven't created a hard and fast decision into how we are handling that. But we are, as I said, very flexible and try to, at least on a case-by-case basis, have some leniency there. But the possibility of doing across the board, getting rid of fines completely, that would take a lot more discussion.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Next one. What type of books do you give to the jail?
We give them, it's paperbacks only, but it's funny, the same things that pop off the shelf here in our library circulate just as well in the jail. James Patterson can do no wrong. We also have, there's a demand for inspirational fiction, and this particular facility is men and women, so I try and give a balance of those. Just really popular bestsellers, but as we get like into a series, she'll let me know, okay, I'm missing number 17 in the Ladies Detective Agency, or, you know, we kind of take it on a monthly basis. I send her a spreadsheet and say, this is what I have. What are you missing? I mean, some teen books, actually, the Harry Potters are literally falling apart, and I am scrambling to try and find paperback Harry Potters to get into the jail. So the biggest constraint on what she has said is they can't have very salacious covers.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Okay, so next up then, and this is actually a two-part question that's coming from Michael. So he's interested in the funding aspect because he's starting a particular program. So first he asks, when you're asking for donations in general, let's look at it, this one in general. Is it better to ask big or small?
I think it depends on, I think it helps to have a good idea of why you're seeking the donation. And I can give an example based on our summer reading program. When I began talking to potential donors in the community, we knew that we wanted to have different prize levels. So we knew that we wanted to have some prizes that were obtainable, that were smaller in nature. We also knew that we wanted to have opportunities to win grand prizes as well. So when I approached Chick-fil-A and Wendy's and similar places to that, we went in really with the goal of asking for larger quantities of those smaller items so that we could reach as many people in the program as we could. Okay. And then in asking for the grand prizes, that kind of allows you to tailor your request even greater. Which group are you seeking that for? And again, you know, and like we mentioned earlier too, being able to provide those potential donors with as much information as you can about the program and why you're seeking those donations is a huge help.
Okay, and that's a great lead-in as to his next part of the question. It has to do with a very specific project. So from what I'm hearing is that, you know, if you have a good reason and you have a good idea as to what it is you need, it doesn't hurt to ask. And here, you know, Michael's looking at starting a business and career center, and he's looking for donations for interview clothes and haircuts and things like that for the participants. Does anybody, including the audience, Tracy, Paula, Sarah, does anyone feel that there's an issue with asking for those types of donations?
No, I don't think so. And I think what you just said, Susan, is such an important point. It doesn't hurt to ask. I think if your heart is in the right place, if you're, you know, the reason you're asking is for a good cause, then I don't think it ever hurts to ask. The worst someone can say is, no, we're not able to do that. But even in those cases, sometimes they might not be able to give at that particular moment, but they're made more aware of your mission, of what you're trying to do. And you never know where opportunities might come up in the future where that person or organization would love to work with you on other things. Mm-hmm. I know there were a few, you know, that I approached who were unable to give this time around, but we're very interested in us keeping in touch and letting them know of future opportunities as they came about. So yeah, I don't think, I think as long as your mission is a good one, and especially one that's going to benefit so many people in the community, I think it doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah. Yep, I definitely agree. So, okay, we have a few more questions that did come in after I had created the slides. So I don't have these on slide decks. I apologize for that, but I'll read them out in summary as best I can. With your preschool outreach programs, do you participate in Books for Babies and the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten programs?
Do we?
We do participate in 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten. Actually, that's something that our software through Beanstack has allowed us to do too. We're able to have that as a part of our Beanstack program as well. So when families register for our summer reading program now, if their children are within that age group, that age range, that birth to preschool age range, they're given the option of whether they would like to register for 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten. And I think when I checked numbers earlier, we were almost at 900 registrations for 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten. So it's really, that's been a wonderful, wonderful addition too. But yeah, we definitely participate in that.
Wonderful. And then I just have two more here. One of them I'm going to leave for last because it could be a bit longer. But one question is, are you involved in any outreach efforts for people with disabilities? How can libraries become more accessible to the people of all abilities?
That is something we are definitely exploring. We do have in Georgia the Georgia Library for Accessible Services through GLASS. I do make sure and take those materials with me. I was actually, when I was at the food pantry this week, there's a woman who, she has macular degeneration and she can't read. And I mean, she was the classic profile for this service, but had no idea that it existed. And luckily her daughter was there with her. I could walk them through the process and they could become, more aware of the service. But my goal wasn't targeting that, specifically targeting people with disabilities. But again, we are looking into it. There are a couple of alternative schools for youth with autism and other issues that I'm working with or going to work with in the coming year. But really, it's identifying the best way to reach those audiences right now that I'm working on.
All right.
That's kind of a half answer.
Thank you, Sarah. And I know it can be tough because there are so many, a lot of times at Tutor.com we'll be asked, do you help students with learning disabilities? There are thousands of different learning disabilities out there. And so it's a difficult question to answer in short, because
right.
Each person or each disability or even each group is going to require a different type of outreach or different types of consideration. And, libraries being there to serve everyone and the great equalizers, it's important to be able to do that. But sometimes I also feel like we just don't know what we don't know.
Right.
So it's all about the learning. And I think community partnerships can be great in that aspect as well, to learn who we may not be serving out there. So, all right, the very last question that I've gotten so far, and I think this is the last one we'll do because we're at about 15 minutes. So going back to the collaboration with the schools, I know that this is something that a lot of libraries struggle with and districts struggle with, and it's actually something we're looking at expanding on as well. The question specifically is, how did you get the schools to collaborate with you? So would you say it started at the higher levels between Anna and the superintendent? Was it grassroots with lots of teachers? What would you say is the best first step?
For us, historically, grassroots was the way it started. That way back in the day, 20 years ago, when we were a new system, we would go to individual schools and give presentations or do outreach or talk about summer reading. But the more our county grew, the harder those individual, we send a librarian to every school kind of situation wasn't going to work for us anymore. When we have 38 schools and a limited number of librarians who can go out and travel and make presentations, became cumbersome, and we weren't reaching all of them that we wanted to, and that was a disappointment to us. So then we kind of switched from hitting them at the grassroots level to having our board decide that we needed to offer library cards as a way to draw people into the library, so they would have another way besides communicating through the school system to know about our services. So in that regard, our board of directors and library leadership got together and discussed in detail how can we make library services both accessible and attractive to students and teachers, administrators, counselors, everyone in the school system. And once our director, Anna, got in touch with the school superintendent, then it was much easier to work at all levels. So our director and the superintendent have a relationship. Tracy is our programming manager, and Sarah, as our outreach manager, has a relationship with our district's lead media specialist, the person who coordinates all the media centers and all the libraries at the school system, at the schools. And then we also work at a branch level still, individual staff members going to individual school programs to talk about library services, to give a story time or lead an assembly or talk about digital literacy. So now it's integrated. It's from the top to the bottom and back again, if that answers your question.
Okay, yeah, and just to clarify, Paula, in your area, the districts for the schools do not necessarily overlap with the library's legal service area. And that's why you guys went out and did the expansion of card accessibility, correct?
Right. So we allow folks now under our new rules that if you are not a resident of the county, but you are a student in the county or a teacher in the county or employed by an educational agency in the county, that you may now have a card for the library free of charge. So now if I work in the local preschool, which is not associated with the library or the county government or the local public school system, I can still get a free library card because I am teaching in a preschool located in Forsyth County.
School. Okay. And do your school districts and library district boundaries, is it by county? There's no
yes,
outside the line coloring?
Correct. Yeah, it's a county-wide system. Yes.
Okay. Because I only ask that because I know that's an issue in a lot of, especially suburban areas, where the libraries have to share schools with other libraries, and if they don't all offer the same thing, it's very difficult to get the schools to promote their services or allow them to come in, and that's a struggle that we face in many different places. So, okay, from the list I had looked at before, that had been the last question that had came in for the group. And so what I'm going to say is, if you guys do have additional questions regarding partnership and you'd like to carry on the conversation, I'm going to ask you to send those to me at clientsupport@Tutor.com. And we'll be able to post additional questions and maybe some of a summary of the responses that we've received today, so we can go ahead and carry on the conversation past the presentation. So email us at clientsupport@Tutor.com. Paula, Tracy, Sarah, thank you. I really, really enjoyed this. I learned a lot. I'm sure our audience did as well. And we love partnering with you guys. You're doing wonderful things over there.
Thank you, Susan. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you all, and have a great day.